Okay, what do Islamists, Hamas supporters, white nationalists, and anarcho-capitalists or anarchists, anti-establishment types have in common? Well, apparently they all hate Jews. Sorry, Zionists. They all hate Zionists. I'm sure many of you have heard about the horseshoe theory, about horseshoe theory in political science. Traditional political theory describes left and right ideologies as opposing ends of a spectrum. Each ideology has its own side. Horseshoe theory, on the other hand, describes ideologies as more of a horseshoe shape, where the extremes converge. Usually, what we would be talking about is with respect to how authoritarian people who subscribe to each ideology are, and how, in the end, they all want to tell you what to do. Unfortunately, I've come to realize this convergence also applies to hating Jews. Sorry, I don't know what's wrong with me. Zionists, hating Zionists. They all hate Zionists. In the aftermath of October 7th, as the shock of the brutality of the rape of women, unaliving of kids, etc., in Israel by Hamas started falling off of the collective international attention, something interesting, for the lack of a better word, started happening. In spite of Hamas taking responsibility for the attacks, Arabs celebrating them, video footage from the terrorists' own GoPros showing almost everything. Well, everything. Videos taken by the Nova party goers that got massacred, videos from security cameras in the region, admissions of captured Hamas terrorists, of all of the above, first-hand testimonies by raped Israeli women, first-hand testimonies by small Israeli children scarred for life. In spite of all of this, so-called pro-Palestinian channels, white nationalist channels, and anti-establishment community, mostly on the left side of the political spectrum, began claiming that it's all fake. A Zionist plot to create an excuse to go into Gaza and kill innocent Gazans. So let's reality test this for a couple of minutes. Firstly, the seed, the basis of these claims, is in the recent revelation that a Hannibal directive was given by the Israeli military that day. What's a Hannibal directive? A Hannibal directive means that in cases of kidnapped Israeli soldiers, IDF fighters, all of them, are supposed to try to unalive their kidnapped comrades. So they do this in order to avoid them being tortured by Hamas or other organizations, something that they do. Proud of it, they do that. And circumvent having them used as human shields or pawns for negotiations, etc., which is what we're experiencing right now. On October 7th, the claim is that such an order was given to the helicopter pilots who responded to the Hamas attacks, and they basically were ordered to shoot all movement flowing back into Gaza, whether or not they recognized Hamas terrorists or could tell them apart from kidnapped Israelis, from kidnapped Israeli soldiers or civilians that the Hamas took from Israel that day. That's the main idea. For the sake of the argument, I'm going to say that that's true, even though I'm not sure that it is, but I'm just going to go with it because it doesn't matter at all. It doesn't change the situation. It doesn't have a real bearing on what I'm about to say, what I'm arguing. The first thing that I'd like you to remember is this. When Hamas entered Israeli territory, went into cities, kibbutzes, invaded civilian communities, they were followed by the so-called uninvolved civilian Gazans. This is a fact. It's also very important to note that not all Hamas terrorists were in uniform of any sort. Some were in Hamas uniforms and attire. Some were were wearing IDF colors in uniform. And so it was a mix of Hamas in their uniform, Hamas in plain clothes, Hamas in IDF uniform, and Gazan civilians in plain clothes who entered Israel that day and committed all of these atrocious acts. This is a war crime. From a legal standpoint, from an international law standpoint, this is what it is. Maybe I'll delve into it in another video, but international law clearly states that you're supposed to wear your own distinct uniform when acting officially in any kind of military or paramilitary activity. You are forbidden from wearing the other side's uniform. to such an extent that you're allowed to execute a prisoner of war on site who does that on the battlefield. Whether they gave up their guns or still fight doesn't matter. Even if after they gave up, if they're wearing your uniform disguised as your soldiers, you're allowed to execute them, and you will not be court-martialed for that. Moreover, and most important, targeting civilians for the sake of targeting civilians is a war crime, and it's in violation of international law. This is not collateral damage. These people went into civilian communities to attack, kill, kidnap, etc. Civilians, for being civilians, not combatants, not fighters, civilians, mothers, kids, grandmas. So now, it's clear that even if we accept that the Hannibal directive was given, there was no way of distinguishing between Hamas and Israeli mothers, kids, teens, elderly people, all of them brutally taken from their beds and homes into captivity by a side that was and still is in stark violation of international law. They took babies. This is not a disputed piece of evidence or a statement, even by the staunchest Hamas supporters. They took babies, kids. There was even a baby born in captivity. And the list of atrocities just keeps going on and mounts up. Now, let's say, for the sake of the argument, again, that the IDF did, in the fog of war, unalive some Israelis. Does this prove that this was a false flag operation? Is this the smoking gun that all the groups that I mentioned before desperately want to have against Israel? I don't think so. As I said, the people making these claims latch onto this incident and ignore the unsurmountable mountain of evidence I presented. Not only do they ignore it, they claim it's all fake. Houses burned from the outside, plus videos taken by Hamas of Hamas terrorists setting fires to these houses, saying clearly in Arabic, let's burn them out and shoot them. If we don't shoot them, they'll just choke to death. That lies. Those were Hellfire missiles from the IDF. First-hand grape allegations, coupled with physical evidence of unalive women with stuff shoved into them, fake. Videos showing gliders flying into the Nova Festival, shouting Allahu Akbar and smiling as they mow down partygoers, fake. Burnt bodies of babies, that's AI. Videos of wounded kids in their living room after their father laid on a grenade to save them, as Hamas animals enjoy their time in those kids' homes, as these kids cry and scream out for their parents, asking, are they dead? Are they dead? That's a deep fake Zionist lies. What about Shani Luke's body paraded around Gaza, being spat on by the so-called uninvolved civilians of Gaza? Crisis actors. It's beyond me to say what brings people to actively deny reality and truth. Many of my friends and relatives say it's good old anti-Semitism, and this is just another modern version of a blood libel. Just like Europeans claim Jews need Christian children's blood for religious Jewish ceremonies. Well, that may be the case, but it doesn't change any of the facts. Hamas and regular everyday civilians from Gaza, the so-called innocent, uninvolved people of Gaza, raped Israeli women as a form of terrorism or act of war. They did it. They also unalived Israeli kids in their beds intentionally. They admit it and broadcast it to the world in pride. They targeted civilians for the sake of targeting civilians. They still do and are not ashamed of it. I can stomach unalive soldiers or saying Israel is an occupation that deserves to be resisted by all means, but at least when they literally use all means, like the horrendous, inhumane means that I mentioned earlier, own up to it. Have the backbone to say you're proud of what they did, like many of Hamas actually do. Don't take my word for it. Look it up. You'll see it all. It's all online. And after you see the blood and tears, hear the screams with your own ears, sounds that cannot be misunderstood or misrepresented or faked, images that cannot be conjured up in a studio, real, actual reactions that are only produced by humans in the most nightmarish, extreme situations. Watch the Arabs laugh at them as they live a nightmare in reality. Watch these people enjoy themselves at the sight and sound of torture. Bear witness yourself, not secondhand. Look it up for yourself and then deny it if you can.